It was 3 a.m. when the knock came. At first it was barely noticeable, just a faint tap against the door. But then it came again, louder this time. The sound sliced through the stillness of the night, echoing through the small apartment. Alex had been sleeping, but the noise yanked them out of the dream they had been lost in. Blinking groggily, they checked the clock on the wall. The red numbers flashed back at them. 3:04 a.m. Who could possibly be knocking at this hour? Sitting up in bed, Alex ran a hand through their messy hair, still unsure if they were fully awake. It took them a few moments to gather their senses before slipping off the bed and stumbling toward the door. The apartment was quiet otherwise, just the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the only sign of life. They reached the door, hesitated for just a moment, and then opened it, expecting perhaps a late-night delivery or a neighbor who needed something. What they didn't expect was to find a tall, thin figure standing just outside their door. The figure's skin shimmered a pale green under the hallway light, and their hair was a brilliant silver, almost as though it was made of light itself. Alex froze, caught off guard by the sheer otherworldliness of the being standing before them. It wasn't their first time seeing their neighbor, but it was the first time they'd seen them at this hour. The alien had lived next door for nearly a year now. Always polite, but never overly friendly. They had an air of mystery about them. And though Alex had tried to talk to them before, the alien always kept to themselves, never really offering much beyond a brief greeting. But now, standing in front of Alex's door at 3 a.m., the alien seemed different. There was an anxious energy to them, something out of place. And then came the words, "Can I sleep next to you tonight, human?" The alien's voice was soft but clear, their tone tinged with an emotion Alex couldn't quite place. Alex blinked, not sure if they had heard correctly. Was this some kind of joke? Or a strange misunderstanding? The alien didn't move, just stood there, their expression unreadable. Alex stood frozen in the doorway, unsure how to respond. The alien wasn't exactly the type to ask such personal things. It wasn't that they had been unfriendly, but there had been an unspoken distance, a barrier that Alex had respected. Alex started, but their words faltered as they tried to process the situation. Why do you need to sleep next to me? The alien's eyes, a deep shade of violet, glanced away for a moment before returning to Alex's face. The alien took a slow, deep breath, as if gathering their thoughts. The alien hesitated, their hands clasped in front of them. I cannot sleep alone tonight. I need proximity to feel safe. It's part of my species' way of healing. Alex stared at the alien, still unsure of what to make of this. They had never heard of anything like this before. The alien's race was known to be peaceful, technologically advanced, and remarkably private. So, for them to ask such a strange request seemed out of character. Alex shifted their weight from one foot to the other, feeling a bit uncomfortable, but also deeply curious. You're not in any trouble, right? Alex asked, unsure if they should be more concerned about this situation than they were. The alien's eyes flickered for just a moment, then softened. No, not in the way you mean. But I have been away from home for far too long. I am alone here. The distance is too much sometimes. There was a pain in their voice, something that sounded both foreign and familiar. It was a strange thing to hear, coming from someone so different, someone who was not from Earth. But there was a truth in their words that Alex couldn't ignore. The silence between them stretched for what felt like a long time. The alien didn't move, and Alex stood still, their heart beating just a little faster than normal. Okay, Alex said finally. After a few moments of reflection, you can stay. Just for tonight. The alien's expression softened, and Alex could swear there was a glimmer of relief in their eyes. They stepped back from the door, allowing the alien to enter. The alien walked in, their presence strangely comforting, yet foreign at the same time. Alex couldn't quite explain it. There was something deeply intriguing about them, and yet something that made Alex cautious. Alex led the alien to the couch, the only comfortable spot available in the apartment. It was small, cozy, and had just enough space for two people to sit together, even if they were from completely different worlds. The alien didn't speak again, but they looked around, their eyes darting from one corner of the room to the next. "Do you need anything?" Alex asked, unsure of the customs or expectations that came with this unusual arrangement. The alien nodded slowly. "Just your presence." "And your warmth," they said softly. "That is all." Alex felt a strange pull to help, even though they didn't fully understand the alien's needs. It wasn't just out of kindness, it was something deeper. Maybe it was the vulnerability in the alien's voice, the way they had asked for help without any pretense. Alex sat down on the other end of the couch, keeping a little distance but still close enough that they could feel the presence of the alien. The alien lay down, curling up slightly, their body language suggesting they were still on edge. It was as if they were waiting for something, unsure of whether to fully trust Alex. The air between them felt thick, with unspoken words. Alex could sense that the alien was holding something back, a part of them that was still unsure, still guarded. But for the first time, Alex saw the alien not as a strange, distant neighbor, but as someone who needed help, someone who was in many ways just as human as they were. As the hours passed, Alex couldn't help but wonder what the alien's life had been like before arriving on Earth. What kind of pain had they carried with them? What had they left behind, and what had they found in the human world? But those questions would have to wait. For now, there was just the quiet of the night, the presence of another being in the room, and a strange but undeniable connection forming between them. Eventually, Alex drifted off to sleep, the soft sound of the alien's breathing a reminder that the night was far from ordinary. It wasn't just the strange request or the otherworldly presence of their neighbor that made the night feel different. It was the realization that, sometimes, even the most unlikely connections could form in the quietest of moments. And for Alex, this night would be the beginning of something far more complex than they could ever have imagined. The morning light came slowly, filtering through the blinds, casting long shadows across the small apartment. Alex stirred from sleep, still groggy, and stretched, feeling the warmth of the covers around them. The events of the previous night felt almost like a dream. Had the alien really knocked on their door at 3 a.m.? Had they really asked to sleep next to them? Alex rubbed their eyes and glanced over at the couch. The alien was still there, curled up in a strange but peaceful way. They hadn't moved much throughout the night, and the silence in the room was almost comforting. For a moment, Alex just watched them. There was something oddly serene about the alien's presence. Despite their odd appearance with their glowing skin and silver hair, the alien seemed more human than anything Alex had expected. It was as if the alien had found a moment of peace, something they didn't have in the chaos of their own world. Alex shook off the lingering feeling of strangeness and got out of bed. They grabbed their robe from the hook by the door and quietly went to the kitchen. The smell of coffee brewing in the small machine filled the air, a simple comfort that Alex had always relied on. They poured themselves a cup, then glanced back at the couch. The alien was still asleep, their chest rising and falling slowly in a rhythmic pattern. It made Alex wonder if this was what they truly needed: quiet, stillness, a break from the constant uncertainty they must have faced. Alex didn't know much about their neighbor, but something told them that the alien had been through more than they were willing to share. Alex tried to go about their morning routine, making breakfast and tidying up the apartment, but their thoughts kept drifting back to the alien. Why had they come to them? They had never asked for help before. Why now? As the minutes passed, Alex felt the urge to ask more questions. Who was this alien? Where did they come from? Why were they on Earth? But Alex also knew better than to push too hard. The alien had made it clear that they didn't share much about their past. It seemed like there was something they were hiding, something they weren't ready to talk about. A quiet shift in the room pulled Alex from their thoughts. The alien stirred, shifting slightly on the couch. Alex watched, unsure if they should say anything or just let them wake up on their own. But after a moment, the alien opened their eyes, blinking against the daylight. Their violet eyes met Alex's gaze, and for a second, neither of them spoke. There was a sense of understanding between them, like they both knew that something had changed, even if they didn't fully understand it. "Good morning," Alex said, trying to sound casual. They could feel the awkwardness in the air, but they didn't know how else to break the silence. The alien sat up slowly, their movements graceful and deliberate. They looked around the room as if taking in the surroundings for the first time. Alex watched them, waiting for some kind of response. "Thank you for letting me stay," the alien said softly, their voice still tinged with that strange emotion Alex couldn't quite place. Alex nodded. "No problem. I just wasn't expecting that kind of request." The alien turned their gaze to Alex, their eyes filled with something, perhaps uncertainty, perhaps curiosity. "It is not easy for me to ask for help," the alien confessed, their voice barely above a whisper. "I have lived alone for so long, but last night I could not sleep. The distance, the loneliness, it is overwhelming sometimes." Alex felt a pang of sympathy. They had never truly considered what it must be like for the alien. Earth was so different from their home. The alien's people, from what Alex knew, were from a distant star system, isolated in ways Alex couldn't fully understand. "I get that," Alex said, stepping forward and offering the alien a small, warm smile. "It's not always easy being alone." The alien's eyes seemed to soften at the words. They didn't say anything else, but Alex could see the quiet acknowledgement in their gaze. It was strange, this unspoken understanding. They were both strangers in a way, both searching for something. For the alien, it was comfort, a connection. For Alex, it was something else, something deeper. After a few moments, Alex returned to the kitchen, feeling the weight of the silence in the room. The alien didn't follow them immediately, but eventually stood up, stretching in a way that seemed both graceful and foreign. Alex glanced over, taking in the way the alien moved, their body language not quite like anything they'd ever seen before. "Do you want to talk?" Alex asked after a moment, unsure if the alien would be open to that kind of conversation. "About last night, I mean." The alien hesitated. Then, slowly, they nodded. "I have been on Earth for many years now, but there are things I have not shared with anyone." "There are reasons I keep to myself." The alien paused, their gaze distant, as if they were remembering something far away. "It is difficult to trust others even now after everything." Alex didn't say anything, just waited. They could feel the tension between them. It was clear that the alien wasn't just talking about trust in the human sense. There was something more, something deeper, that they were struggling to express. "You don't have to tell me everything," Alex said quietly, "but I want you to know that you're not alone here. I'm not going to judge you for what happened. You don't have to keep everything inside." The alien's eyes locked with Alex's, and for the first time they looked vulnerable, as though they were considering whether to reveal something they had buried for too long. "My name is Orcs," the alien said, their voice low but clear. I come from a place far beyond your stars. I have been on Earth for more than 2 decades, and yet I am still far from home." Alex stayed silent, letting the aliens speak in their own time. Eric's continued, their words slow and deliberate. "I was part of a mission to explore your planet, to make contact with your people. But things went wrong. My ship was damaged, and I had to leave it behind. Since then, I have been stranded here, alone. I've been trying to repair the ship, but it's impossible without the proper technology, and so I stay. I live among your people, in hiding." Alex listened intently, taking in the alien's words. The situation was more complicated than they had imagined. Eric's wasn't just an alien neighbor. They were a stranded traveler, isolated in an unknown world, desperately trying to find a way back home. Alex didn't know how to respond to that. The weight of the situation was heavy, and for a moment, they were at a loss for words. "I never meant for you to find out," Orcs continued, their eyes downcast. "But now I fear that I am losing myself. The longer I stay, the harder it becomes to maintain the distance from everything." Alex could sense the aliens' deep loneliness, the isolation they had endured for so long. It was a burden that Alex could never fully understand, but they could feel it, and in that moment, something inside them shifted. This wasn't just about one lonely alien. This was about someone who had been cut off from everything they knew, trying to survive in a world that wasn't their own.
You don't have to be alone anymore," Alex said gently, feeling the weight of their words.
"I can help you, Orcs. We can figure this out together." Eric's looked up, their eyes filled with something Alex couldn't quite read. Relief, perhaps, mixed with hesitation. "I would like that," Eric said softly. "Thank you, human." Alex smiled. But there was still so much to learn, so much to discover about this alien and their world. They didn't know how things would turn out. They didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain. This was just the beginning. Days passed since that quiet night, and Alex found themselves growing more and more accustomed to Erix's presence. It wasn't just that they had offered a place for the alien to stay. It was the quiet understanding between them, the bond that had begun to form in the space they shared. Eric seemed to settle into a routine, waking up early and quietly going about their day, always careful not to intrude on Alex's space. They'd spend hours looking out the window, as though searching for something in the vast skyline. Sometimes they'd share small details about their home, their planet, the stars they came from. Other times they were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. Alex had learned that Erix's people communicated not only through words, but through emotions, through subtle shifts in energy. It was something Alex didn't fully understand, but they could feel it. The alien's presence was always calm, but beneath it, there was an underlying current of sadness that was hard to ignore. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a soft orange glow across the apartment, Erix spoke again. This time, their voice was heavier, filled with a quiet vulnerability. "I've been thinking," Erix began, their gaze distant, "about my people, about my home." Alex glanced up from the book they were reading, sensing the change in the air. Erix was never one to talk much about their past, and it was clear that this conversation wasn't going to be like the others. "Do you miss it?" Alex asked quietly, not sure if they were crossing a boundary, but feeling compelled to ask. Erix nodded slowly. "I do, every day. But it is not just the place that I miss. It is the feeling of belonging, of knowing that you are part of something greater, something bigger than yourself." Alex could see the weight in their eyes, the longing that seemed to stretch far beyond the walls of the apartment. It was a kind of ache that Alex couldn't quite explain, but they understood it all the same. "I understand," Alex said softly. "Sometimes I feel the same way. Like there's a part of me that's missing, a connection that I can't quite find. It's strange, isn't it? How we can be surrounded by so many people, yet still feel so alone." Erix turned to face them, their expression thoughtful. "Yes, that is exactly how I feel. I am surrounded by so many, but none of them truly understand. I am different, and that difference, it makes everything harder." Alex wanted to say more, to offer some comfort, but the words didn't come. They knew that nothing they could say would make Eric's pain disappear. Instead, they just sat there in the silence, letting it settle between them. But Eric's didn't seem to want to stay in that silence for long. After a few moments, they spoke again, their voice quieter this time. I wonder, sometimes, if I made the right choice. If I should have stayed with my people, but I was a part of something important. Something that I could not abandon. And yet, here I am. Alex felt the heaviness of the words. It wasn't just homesickness, it was regret. It was the weight of decisions made long ago. Decisions that had led to a life of solitude.
There's no way to go back, is there? Alex asked, almost as if asking it for themselves.
No, Eric's replied softly. The way home is gone. Ah, my people. I may never see them again. The room felt colder somehow, the distance between them growing wider as Eric spoke those words. Alex felt the pull of that sadness, but they didn't know how to fix it. How could they? Eric stood up and moved toward the window, their figure framed by the soft glow of the setting sun. There was something graceful about the way they moved, something alien yet familiar. They stared out at the horizon, their eyes distant once more. You've never talked about your people much, Alex said after a long pause. I guess I always wondered why. Why did you stay here? Eric's didn't turn to face Alex immediately. Instead, they seemed to be lost in their own thoughts, as if considering how much they should reveal. Finally, they spoke, their voice calm, but filled with a weight that Alex had never heard before. I came to Earth on a mission, a diplomatic mission. We were supposed to establish contact, to form an alliance with your people. But things went wrong. My ship was damaged. The communications systems were down, and after the crash, I was left behind, alone.
I couldn't get back in touch with my people. Alex didn't know what to say.
It was one thing to know that Eric's was stranded, but hearing the full story, the desperation behind their words, made the situation feel so much heavier. Have you tried to contact them again? Alex asked. Do you still have a way to reach them? Eric's shook their head slowly. I have no way. My ship was the only means of communication, and it was destroyed in the crash. I tried to rebuild it, to fix it, but I have no resources. The technology I need is beyond what Earth can offer. Alex's heart sank. It seemed impossible. Eric's, stranded on Earth, without hope of ever going home. The alien's entire life had been turned upside down in a single moment, and now they were stuck in a world that didn't understand them, surrounded by a society that couldn't help. I'm sorry, Alex said quietly. I wish I could help. Eric's turned toward Alex then, their eyes searching theirs. You are helping, they said softly, just by being here. Just by understanding. The words hit Alex harder than they expected. It was strange how much a simple act of kindness could mean to someone who had been alone for so long. Eric's had trusted them, and that trust was something Alex didn't take lightly.
I don't understand everything, Alex admitted. I don't know what it's like to be where you're from.
I don't know what it's like to lose everything. Eric's nodded slowly, their eyes glistening with something close to gratitude. You don't have to understand. All I need is to be here, to have someone who doesn't see me as just an alien, but as something more. The silence stretched between them again, but it wasn't as heavy as before. There was a sense of peace in the air, a quiet understanding that neither of them had expected. Alex wasn't sure what the future held, but they knew one thing for sure. They couldn't turn their back on Eric's. No matter how strange things got, no matter how different their worlds were, they were in this together. And that, for now, was enough. As the last of the sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Alex and Eric's sat in the quiet apartment, each lost in their thoughts, but both feeling for the first time in a long while that they weren't so alone. The days that followed were filled with a strange kind of routine. It was a calm, quiet life that Alex had never expected to share with an alien. It wasn't just that they were sharing the same space. It was the unspoken bond that had begun to grow between them, the slow but sure understanding that neither of them had to be alone anymore. Orcs had become a part of Alex's everyday life. They'd spend the mornings together, sitting at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee in comfortable silence. Orcs seemed to appreciate the quiet, the normalcy of it all, as though this simple routine was something they hadn't had in years. They were no longer a stranger, no longer a mysterious figure living next door. They were a companion, a friend, in their own quiet way. But despite the calmness that had settled in, there were moments when Alex could see the weight of Erix's past creeping into their thoughts. There were times when Orcs would become distant, lost in their own mind, staring out the window at the world beyond, as though searching for something that was always just out of reach. And Alex would watch, knowing that no matter how hard they tried, there were some things they could never fix. There were some wounds too deep to heal with simple kindness. One evening, as the sky outside darkened and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Eric spoke again, their voice quieter than usual. It was a stark contrast to the silence they had been sharing all evening. "I've been thinking," Eric said, their words slow and deliberate, "about my people, about the mission I was on, about the choices I made." Alex set down the book they had been reading, sensing that this conversation was different. There was a weight to Eric's words that they hadn't heard before. It was more than just homesickness or longing. It was something deeper. "What kind of mission?" Alex asked, keeping their voice soft, gentle. They had learned that sometimes the best way to get Eric's to talk was to simply listen. Eric's took a deep breath, as though preparing to share something they had kept hidden for a long time. "It was a mission of peace. We were sent to your planet to establish a connection, to offer knowledge, to build a future together. My people believed that your species could be an important ally. We thought we could share our technology, our wisdom, and help each other grow." Alex's mind raced as they tried to imagine what that must have been like. A peaceful mission, a chance to unite two very different worlds. But things had clearly gone wrong. "But something happened," Alex said, following the thread of the story. "What went wrong?" Eric's eyes dropped to the floor, their expression distant. "The ship was sabotaged," they said quietly. There were factions within my people who didn't agree with the mission. They didn't want to share our knowledge, to trust your species. They believed that humanity wasn't ready for the truth, that it would only bring destruction. They thought it was safer to stay hidden. Alex felt a chill run down their spine as the pieces began to fall into place. "So someone sabotaged the mission?" Eric's nodded. "Yes." "They damaged the ship, destroyed the communication systems, and left us stranded. I was the only one to survive. The others, they didn't make it." Alex sat back, feeling the weight of the alien's words settle heavily between them. They had always known that Orcs had a past, that there was more to their story than met the eye, but hearing it laid out so plainly was different. It was one thing to know that someone was lonely, but it was another to know that their loneliness came from surviving a catastrophe, from watching everything they had worked for fall apart. "What happened after?" Alex asked, their voice barely above a whisper. "What did you do?" Eric's eyes met theirs again, and for the first time Alex saw the pain that had been hidden behind their calm exterior. "I stayed. I tried to repair the ship, to get in contact with my people, but every attempt failed. And every day that passed, I felt more and more distant from them, from everything I knew." The silence stretched between them, and Alex could feel the weight of Erix's grief. It was as though the alien had been carrying the burden of their failure alone for so long that it had become a part of them, woven into the fabric of their very being. "I'm sorry," Alex said, the words coming out softly, as though they could somehow ease the pain Erix had been carrying for years. "I can't imagine what that must have been like." Eric's didn't answer right away. Instead, they looked out the window again, their gaze distant. I used to think that I was strong, that I could handle anything. But this is different. I've been on Earth for so long, and I still don't know if I made the right choice. I don't know if I should have stayed, or if I should have gone back. I don't know what's right anymore. Alex stood up and walked over to where Eric's was standing. They didn't know what to say. Words felt inadequate. But they knew they couldn't just stand there, not when Eric's was so clearly in pain. Without thinking, Alex placed a hand gently on Eric's arm, offering the simple comfort of human contact. It wasn't much, but it was something. "You don't have to have all the answers," Alex said softly.
None of us do. But you don't have to do this alone.
"You've got me. And you've got more than just a place to stay. You have someone who cares." Eric's turned to look at Alex, their eyes softening just a little. "I don't know how to trust again," they admitted, their voice low. "I don't know how to let go of the past." Alex nodded, understanding. "I get it. I really do." But trust doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And it's okay to take things slow. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet, except for the sound of their breathing. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt comfortable, as though they had both reached a quiet understanding. "I'll try," Eric said finally, their voice steady. "I'll try to trust again. For you. For us." Alex smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over them. They didn't know what the future would hold, but they knew that they had made a difference in Eric's life. In their own way, they had become part of something bigger, something that neither of them had expected. As the night grew darker and the stars twinkled brightly above, Alex and Eric sat in the quiet apartment, no longer strangers but companions, each with their own pain and fears, but also with the understanding that they didn't have to face them alone. It wasn't the kind of ending they had both expected, but it was a beginning, a new chapter that neither of them could have predicted. And for the first time in a long while, they both felt a little less alone in the vast, endless universe.